And welcome into the final pre-recorded episode of Plead Your Case for the 2024-25 academic school year. I'll be your host for today's episode, Anthony DeFilippo. The NHL playoffs are right around the corner starting next week. The NBA playoffs are ready to kick off, and Joey has something to say about the Masters right here on this episode of Plead Your Case.
Hey there, sports fans. You're watching another episode of Waynesburg University Community Television's only national sports debate show, Plead Your Case. Whether you're a diehard fan or a casual observer, get ready to join us every week as we dive deep into current pressing sports topics. Our panelists dissect every angle, every scenario, and every statistic to influence their fiery takes.
What has he done without Tom Brady?
And spirited arguments.
No, listen, Bowtie. Have you ever played Foursquare? No, you were too old to play Foursquare.
There will be no argument unexplored, and every take will be under review.
After reviewing the play...
Here in the Waynesburg University Communication Department, we believe in heated debates with a touch of friendly competition, which is why we also have a fresh 5 and 5 mini segment that you won't want to miss.
I don't think a pitcher is breaking Cy Young's wins record of 511.
You Google America's team and what do you get? You get the...
So sit back, relax, and get ready for some serious sports chat. It is time to plead your case.
And welcome into the first segment of this episode of Plead Your Case. Once again, I'm Anthony DeFilippo, joined by Tyler Aaron and Braden King to talk some NHL playoffs. Guys, how are you doing?
Doing awesome. Great.
Well, here's a look at the bracket for the NHL playoffs this year. We'll start with the Eastern Conference. It's another matchup between the Tampa Bay Lightning and Florida Panthers. No surprise there. The Maple Leafs are likely going to be taking on the Senators. And then the Capitals, who won the Eastern Conference, they'll likely be taking on, or they haven't won it yet, but they're going to win it, are going to be taking on the Canadiens probably, or the Blue Jackets, but we'll get to that. And then the Hurricanes and Devils will be playing each other once again. So, Tyler, I'll start with you. Just looking at this bracket as it stands right now, what stands out to you? What do you like? What are your thoughts?
Well, I like that Montreal and Ottawa, after having so many crucial years of a rebuild, finally in that playoff picture. Obviously, Ottawa's already good. They already have that wild card one spot. They cannot go anywhere. So they're going to play the division winner of either the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Tampa Bay Lightning. Although, like you said, it's probably going to be Toronto. So we get a nice battle of Ontario there. Ottawa is a good team, obviously, with the big acquisition of Linus Ullmark as well. That's definitely huge, and he's really been a difference maker for Ottawa this year. But even the offensive star power, obviously the shocking Josh Norris trade that happened that sent Dylan Cousins to Ottawa, that was surprising, but it's really worked out for him. And then if you look over at Montreal's side, they're even going to get stronger when Ivan Demidov, as he enters the lineup now for Montreal, just that 1 point away from locking up that second wild card spot and having a date with the Washington Capitals in round one.
Braden, your overall thoughts?
It's going to be an outstanding side for the East. Obviously, coming into it, the thing that really gravitates my attention the most is that Carolina-New Jersey playoffs on the first round matchup. These two teams have met in the playoffs 5 times before. Carolina's had New Jersey's number. They've won the last 4 playoff series is when they've matched up against each other together. And, we could go into a whole bunch of predictions if we really wanted to, but that the way that the Metropolitan Division has really turned out this year, I think has turned a lot of heads. Honestly, you talk about where Columbus has been, how the resurgence of the Devils have been this year. Carolina and Washington at being at the top. Even Washington at the start of the year, no one really thought that they would be at the position that they would be in at this moment. But as far as the Eastern Conference goes, that's what really gets me excited is how the Metropolitan Division has been shaping up.
Yeah, I think I almost scoffed at the Devils being rated so highly coming into the season because this team on paper, it was okay. They had Jack Hughes coming back. Heischer's obviously there. They had the studs, but I was kind of worried, kind of curious to see how their depth would shake out. Stefan Nason has been fantastic there this year. He has over 20 goals, the former Penguin, by the way. And the Hurricanes are coming into this series. They have decent playoff success, but they typically don't go terribly far. I think that's the matchup of the first round as far as newcomer matchups. But, guys, we also have Florida and Tampa likely playing each other again. Tyler, what are your thoughts on some of these returning matchups and teams that have bad blood already?
Well, the Tampa-Florida series, again, not official yet, but probably will be official here in the coming days. It's going to be huge. Just because, I mean, I'm pretty sure this is the third time in the last 4 seasons they played each other. Obviously, these two teams are stronger. Obviously, Florida built up and got Brad Marchand and Seth Jones as well. Tampa Bay getting Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gourde from Seattle and stuff. They made a lot of moves at the deadline, and they were 2 of my biggest winners from the deadline. And them going toe-to-toe with each other, obviously Vasilevsky and Bobrovsky going back at it again in the goal crease. It's going to be an amazing series, and I think this is going to be one that's going to go the whole 7 games.
Here's an interesting one, Braden. Capitals and Habs, the Montreal Canadiens. That's interesting to me. Is it as interesting to you?
Oh, absolutely. You know, obviously it's not set in stone yet. Columbus still has a fighting chance to get that final wild card spot and face off against the Caps, which, by the way, the doubleheader between Columbus and Washington over the weekend when the Jackets smacked them both times. That's something to look forward to if Columbus gets the opportunity to move into that playoff spot. But as it looks like right now with Montreal hanging on to that spot, you know, Montreal's honestly had Washington's number in the past. When the Capitals have been that number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, Washington has fallen off in that first round, especially against a team like Montreal. And, you know, as of late, when you've been taking a look at the Caps in their last 8 games, after Ovechkin broke the record, it seems like they've been, you know, just taking their foot off the gas pedal a little bit, coasting their way into the playoffs. Montreal's been on a hot streak as of late. And now with adding their newly talented prospect in Demidov, it should be a really good series.
Let's kick the can down the road a little bit, and Braden, I'll come back to you. Who do you think your conference finals are going to be in the Eastern Conference, and then who do you think will make it out into the Stanley Cup playoff or the Stanley Cup final?
Well, the conference runs through the West, or rather the southeastern portion of the United States. You know, the last 5 Eastern Conference championship teams have all been either Tampa or Florida. So I think, you know, we can't get a rematch of Tampa and Florida in the East final again, but nonetheless, I think I'm going to take Florida again, honestly, as one of the teams. And, you know, I could see Carolina making it that far as well to the conference finals. I like them too.
Tyler?
I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I have them taking on the New Jersey Devils. I just really like how they're structured this year. Obviously, when they made it on their last playoff run, obviously, they didn't have goaltending, and that was really what hurt them. They have an elite goaltender in Jacob Markstrom, who has been a little bit streaky this year, but, you know, he's really has brought back his younger days and stuff like that. So, like, the Devils all around, great. Obviously, their depth is tremendous. Obviously, you said Nosen as well. His 1 game with the Penguins. His career. You know, like you said, over 20 goals. Jack Hughes, Luke Hughes, all these tons of young guys who now have that playoff experience already. Now they know kind of what it takes to get there. Although I do think Tampa Bay, obviously, like you said, it runs through Florida, it feels like. So I do think Tampa Bay will make it to that Stanley Cup final.
Braden, who did you have coming out of the East?
Out of the East, I've got Florida. I got the Panthers back up there again.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to bet against the Panthers. The Capitals, who are the Metro 1 seed, they're not going to make it. They're not going to make it. I don't have faith in Washington. Yeah, I have no faith in Washington. Like you said, they're kind of coasting right into the playoffs. So that's always interesting because I feel like you see that in every sport year over year. You see a team that kind of just coasts right into the playoffs, goes against a team that's been fighting day in and day out, and then they get beaten 5 or 6 games. So I could definitely see that happening. But yeah, it's really hard to get a bet against Florida, and that's who I have for the East. Now, turning it over to the West, they house the President's trophy winner in the Winnipeg Jets, the first time they've done it in a little bit here. And they're looking to win it for the first time for a President's Trophy team since the Chicago Blackhawks all the way back in 2013. So, Braden, we'll start with you. Your original thoughts, overall thoughts on what the Western Conference looks like.
Well, the Winnipeg Jets have really ran this conference this year. You know, they started out hot, right? First 13 games, they were on a really big winning streak going through, and I feel like that momentum has really coasted them this whole way throughout the season. So, congrats on Winnipeg, obviously, for winning the President's Trophy. It's a feat that is really hard to accomplish, and they figured it out this year. Other teams that really catch my eye would be Colorado and Dallas. They have a playoff series in the first round, them two against each other. That should be a really good series, as well as the Kings-Edmonton one, which we'll definitely get involved with in just a moment here because, you know, they've faced off against each other the last 4 playoffs in a row. You know, Edmonton has had their number, but something could change this year.
Tyler, is something going to change? What are your thoughts?
As much as I want the Kings to win this, this is like Penguins Rangers all over again from 2014 to 2016, where it was the 3 straight years. Rangers had the Penguins number in round 1 or round 2. Penguins get the job done 2016. Boom, they go on their Cinderella run and win the Stanley Cup. I don't think LA is going to get over the hump again this year. As much as how well that they've played this year, I just don't think that LA has what it takes to beat Edmonton. Obviously, with the two-headed monster they got in Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, obviously we're waiting to see what's going on with Darnell Nurse here as well, as he faces potentially some suspension and a lot of hefty fines. But I just still like how Edmonton's structured. They built on their depth. Now, do I think that they're stronger this year? No. They're definitely a lot older based on the depth that they've added. But I still think Edmonton's going to beat the Kings. So that is like the biggest series on mine, along with the other 2-3 seed and the Dallas Stars and Colorado Avalanche. Whoever wins this series is going to at least make it to the Stanley Cup final. I wouldn't say win the cup.
Ooh, that's interesting, man.
But at least make it to the finals. I just love how both of these teams are. They both did a lot at the deadline, especially Colorado and what they've added. I really believe the winner of that series is going to make it to the Stanley Cup final. They both made it there recently. They still have most of the same guys there on both sides. They added so much more depth. They're like all-star teams, and they're both really fun teams to watch. Now, I don't know who I'd want to pick out of those two because there's so many pros to both of those teams, but I just think that series alone is going to be probably the best of the first round.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the best in the West, the Central 2 versus the Central 3, Dallas and Colorado, and then the Tampa Bay Lightning and Florida Panthers on the other side, the Atlantic 2 against the Atlantic 3. Now, Braden, what about the Vegas Golden Knights? We haven't talked about them a lot.
No,
they're in the playoffs. They won the
up.
Pacific Division. We don't know who they're going to be playing yet.
That's probably one of the issues of why we haven't brought them up is because we don't know who they're going to play against right now. You know, they struggled early on in this year against Minnesota a few times. They've really been able to get the job done against the Blues. If they end up playing the Flames, I feel like they have the Flames number as well. But, you know, that's probably why we haven't really brought up Vegas so far this year. You know, they're a really stout team. Obviously, you think about the goaltending, they have the advantage up there with any other team here in the Western Conference, honestly. So, as far as Vegas goes, I mean, it just depends on who they play in the first round. If it's Minnesota, I don't really like their chances.
I do too. Yeah, Tyler, what about those 2 wild card spots? It comes down to the Wild, the Blues, and the Flames, 2 of the 3 spots in the wild card in the West. Where do you think that goes, and do you think the results of that could really shake up what happens in the first round and beyond?
You know, I absolutely do. I think, honestly, Winnipeg, I know they won the President's Trophy, but you have the curse now on that's been forced upon you. A President's Trophy winner hasn't won the Stanley Cup since 2013, and that was when the Chicago Blackhawks got it done when they beat Boston in 6 games. But looking at the upcoming schedules for all 3 of Minnesota, St. Louis, and Calgary, Minnesota, their final game would technically be yesterday. They're hosting the Ducks tonight, and what's probably going to be my favorite player, Marc-Andre Fleury's final game of his career. St. Louis, they have Utah left, and then Calgary has 2 left. They're hosting Vegas, and they're going at LA. So they have a really tough schedule. But both of those teams really can't move where they're at. Obviously, LA just needs that 1 point to clinch the home ice advantage over Edmonton. But again, like, those could be 2 games where you're playing minor league players just because those teams are resting their starters and stuff like that. So the Flames theoretically could get in. I just like how Minnesota has a weaker opponent in Anaheim. I know they're, I guess, 6th down in that wild card race. So obviously they're limited. But Anaheim hasn't had a bad year. And obviously they just played pretty much the Colorado Eagles when they played the Avalanche. They lost that game 4-2. So I do think Minnesota will get that playoff spot, that top wild card spot. And then St. Louis, I mean, they have Utah. That's another team like Anaheim. I think they'll get that done as well. So I actually think wild card-wise right now, they're going to stay.
Yeah,
Minnesota
they'll
will stay the 1, St. Louis will stay the 2.
Braden, rapid fire here. Who comes out of the West and who ultimately wins your Stanley Cup?
Out of the West, I've got Dallas. I really can't, not pick a stout goaltender in the playoffs. We always talk about the teams that are running into a hot goaltender and they can't solve them. Dallas has that hot goaltender. I feel that Jake Ottinger is the guy to get the job done for Dallas. I think they go all the way to the final. I said they would face off against Florida. I like the Stars winning it all.
Tyler?
You know, I'm going to be the same way as you, but against Tampa. So we're going to get a rematch of that COVID season between Dallas and Tampa Bay, But I think it's going to flip-flop over to Dallas. I really like how Dallas is.
Still have
but
that Florida team.
Yeah, it's still again that Florida team for that 6th straight year. But then also, I can totally see Colorado winning it. There's a whole bunch of these teams, especially out of the Central, that I could really see winning. Winnipeg up there as well, Colorado, Dallas. I don't think anyone out of the Pacific Division is going to make it to the final. It'll be shocking to me.
Yeah, you think it's
if
a Central
Pacific
team.
Most definitely it'll be a Central team, and then out of the East, I think it'll be an Atlantic team.
And who do you have ultimately winning your Stanley Cup?
Dallas.
You have Dallas ultimately winning the Stanley Cup. Okay. I have, out of that Dallas-Colorado series, I have Colorado out of that, but it's going to be really tight. It'll probably go the full 7 games. And that's who I ultimately have winning the Stanley Cup over the Florida Panthers. I just like the depth of Colorado. I think their center depth that they built, the trades that they made, everybody at one point thought they were going to be the wild card 2 team, and they kind of slid up into that Central 3 seed to face off against probably the toughest opponent that they'll face in the Dallas Stars. They'll beat them, and then I wouldn't say they'll coast the rest of the way, but they should go the rest of the way and win the Stanley Cup. Guys, any final thoughts? Excited to watch some hockey this week?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely. You know, the Penguins season's wrapping up. It's been a struggle all year long, but, you know, going into the Stanley Cup playoffs should bring that rejuvenation back in my heart for some playoff hockey, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be outstanding.
Tyler?
You know, honestly, it's going to be nice to watch the Stanley Cup playoffs nice and stress-free now that the Penguins aren't in it. Obviously, we got the game against Washington on Thursday. So, honestly, now I'm looking into the offseason now. I'm looking at the draft lottery. Penguins are 8th best odds. I mean, I am ready for the Penguins offseason to see what Kyle Dubas can do this offseason and hopefully bring in some free agents and some good prospects for Sidney Crosby and hopefully get a playoff run at least one more time before Crosby, Malkin, and Letang do end up retiring.
Bring the Penguins that first overall pick, but maybe save that luck until next year when they can get Gavin McKenna ultimately. But that will do it for our NHL playoff preview. The NHL playoffs start next week, so make sure to stay tuned for that. A playoffs that is already underway or is going to get underway the day of recording is the NBA playoffs. Benicio DeFalco and Ron Brown will break all of that down for you right now here on Plead Your Case.
I'm working here. My bad.
Welcome back into Plead Your Case. We just wrapped up the NHL playoff talk. Now it's time to move things over to the hardwood. It's time for the NBA playoffs. I'm Benicio DeFalco. Join with me is Ron Brown. And the playoffs came very fast, Ron. The first play-in game is actually tonight, the day that this is being recorded. And for the first matchup, we have the Hawks versus the Magic. This game will be going on at 7:30 tonight, followed by the Grizzlies and Warriors. And then we got the Mavericks and Kings and the Miami Heat and the Bulls. So before we get into the playoffs, we got to start with the play-in. One of the first games going on tonight is the Hawks and the Magic. So starting off with this matchup, I like the Magic in this one. I think they're a proven team. You saw what they did just a season ago. They took the first seeded Cleveland Cavaliers this season, 7 games just a season ago. Paulo Banchero, he's a proven playoff performer to this point. And I know Trae Young, part of that switch. The Hawks are a very experienced team. It seems like year in and year out, you find them in this play-in spot. But I like the Magic in this, but the loser can still stay alive. But as I said, I like the Magic. Who do you like here, Ron?
I think, to be honest with you, I think the Orlando Magic will win because statistically they are the best defensive team in the NBA. They are first in points allowed and they're first in blocks. So I think they're the best team. I think they'll find a way to isolate Ice Trae. they're going to find a way to isolate him, and they're going to find a way to win. And Paulo Banchero has definitely became a he's proven why was the first pick 3 years ago. So he's definitely came into his own. They have other guys like Cole Anthony, who's came up to be pretty good. They have a good young roster. I understand the Hawks are more experienced, but I think the Orlando Magic, defensively best team, arguably the best team in the league defensively, I think they take that one.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with those points that you just brought up. The winner of this would go on to play the Boston Celtics, the second-seeded Boston Celtics. But the game that is also going on tonight, the Memphis Grizzlies and the Golden State Warriors. We saw this team match up a couple seasons ago and kind of welcoming Ja Morant to the NBA playoffs. But the Grizzlies have fired their head coach just before the playoffs, Taylor Jenkins. Now, this wasn't the only head coach that was fired, as we saw the Kings unexpectedly fire Mike Brown. They also traded away De'Aaron Fox. And then also the firing of Michael Malone from the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets cleaning house. But sticking to the Grizzlies and the Warriors game, I like Warriors, and I think it comes down to the coaching. You don't have a head coach that's been there all season long. I know it's the assistant coach, but you're going against one of the best or one of the greatest NBA coaches of all time in Steve Kerr, and you're going against the greatest shooter of all time in Steph Curry. He's a proven playoff performer. Ja Morant and the Grizzlies, I think that he's caused a little bit of distraction with this team. I'm not completely out on them. I think they can stay alive, but I like the Warriors in this one. I think it's going to be pretty easy. I mean, it should be a decent game, but due to the factors of experience, Jimmy Butler has completely started a spark in this team, and I think it's proven they got hot at the right time.
As much as it irks my soul to say this, because I hate the Warriors, I absolutely despise the Warriors, I think the Warriors win this game just because the acquisition of Jimmy Butler, they've been on a roll since then. Jimmy Butler has kind of been their replacement for Klay Thompson, which Klay Thompson hasn't been very good over the last few seasons. But I think as far as it goes, I think Golden State will win this one. I understand what you're saying. Ja Morant, I don't think it's that big of a distraction as far as when you've seen what he's done over the last few seasons in the offseason. He hasn't been the greatest decision maker, but this one's not nowhere near as close to those other things. And I think, and in talking about Taylor Jenkins firing, I heard the reasoning why. It's a rumor they're saying is that he was fired because of a disagreement with Ja Morant and Ja Morant's touches and everything. And usually, a lot of times when they fire a guy because of a player, it ends up going left. They end up, the player ends up, something else ends up happening where they end up wanting to leave or they don't like something. When you give the players too much, when you give them too much control on the franchise, it could definitely ruin the team. And just looking at it, I think, though, Golden State wins that one. Like I said, as much as it irks my soul and as much as I'd rather have Memphis win, I think Golden State wins, though.
Pretty shocking move with the Grizzlies sticking the loyalty to Ja Morant, who there's rumors that they were going to trade in the offseason. But sticking to the playoffs and the play-in in particular, the other games in the East is the Chicago Bulls taking on the Miami Heat. I think the playoffs, we talked about it a couple times to this point. Experience is a big part in it. And with that, I'm going with the Miami Heat. I know they're hurting right now. They traded away Jimmy Butler. They brought in Andrew Wiggins, who's great on the defensive side of things. And it seems like he was kind of meant to be a Miami Heat, just with the way they run things. They're a more defensive-minded team. But the winner of this isn't completely into the playoffs. They're going to play the loser.
Jimmy Butler, though. He is not Jimmy Butler.
Okay.
You can't
I didn't say he was Jimmy Butler.
He's not even close to Jimmy Butler, I don't think, because Wiggins is not a number one option. I don't think he's a number one option at all.
I said he was a defensive. He's good on the defensive side of things.
But it made it seem like
he does not have to be. They never asked.
It made it seem like you were alluding that he was on the same level as Jimmy Butler. As far as playoff time comes, I don't think there ain't too many people that's on the same level as Jimmy Buckets.
Yeah, on the Warriors right now. I don't even know why we're talking about him.
Because
in
it seemed like you were
to come
trying
this
to
game.
like compare him to Jimmy
I'm
Butler.
not. I would never compare Andrew Wiggins to Jimmy Butler. I said he's good on the defensive side of things. The Heat, they lost a trade. I mean, you trade away your star player, who you mentioned turns things on in the playoffs. I'm not comparing them whatsoever. Andrew Wiggins is great on the defensive side of things. He was a big part in the playoff push with the Warriors, who won a championship with Andrew Wiggins. He was probably the second best player on that team, even though they had Klay Thompson.
Klay Thompson was still good at that time.
But sticking to this game, I mean, you still got Tyler Hero. You got Bam, who's been a great center. I mean, this guy, I feel like, doesn't get talked enough with the effort he brings night in and night out. This is the best season of Tyler Hero's career. This is still a very good team, but they're without Jimmy Butler. They got Andrew Wiggins, who did not compare to Jimmy Butler, but he's still pretty good.
I think Chicago takes this one, actually. I think Chicago takes it. You know, they have more star power on that team. Even neither one of these teams are actually really that good. They both, I think Miami doesn't have that. They lack that star, and Jimmy Butler has been carrying them for the last, since that, in the bubble when he got him in the finals. He got him in the finals twice, had him in the Eastern Conference Finals. And they lack that without Jimmy Butler. It's still Heat culture and everything, but they have no stars. There's no threat there to me. And I think, the Heat won't be the Heat again until they get another star, which, I mean.
You don't consider Bam a star?
No, he's not a star. He's not Jimmy Butler.
I'll agree with you. He's not on Jimmy Butler's level.
The Heat will get
Bam's
another
pretty
star.
good.
The Godfather, Pat Riley, has always got something up his sleeve. He's going to get another star within the next couple of years. And it's Miami. Everybody wants to go to Miami.
They'll be back. I think the Bulls, they're just too young for me. I think that's a big thing. I think they put a lot of effort in just making it to the playoffs. I know it's a little easier on the eastern side of things, but kicking it over to the West, we have another play-in game talk here. The Dallas Mavericks and the Sacramento Kings. Somehow, some way, the Dallas Mavericks have, with all the drama, they trade away Luka. Kyrie Irving tears his ACL. Anthony Davis has been in and out of the lineup. He's back. Taking on the Sacramento Kings, another team that they've been all over the place this season. They fire Mike Brown, which we talked about, trade away their star, and De'Aaron Fox. And then they bring in the team we just talked about, the Chicago Bulls. They bring in Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, another guy who's very familiar with the play-in. But I'm kind of in between on this one. In terms of playoff performers, DeRozan is a proven playoff performer.
No, you can't say that. When has he been a proven playoff player?
Listen, in terms of wins, DeRozan has not been great. And you're matching.
I'm not even talking about. I'm talking about his
always
performance.
was matching
I'm
up
talking about
against the greatest player of all time,
I'm talking
LeBron
about
James.
His performance. He has not been that good of a player. Why do you think Toronto got rid of him in the first place after they told him they weren't going to trade him? So what are you talking about? He has not been a good performer in the playoffs. He's not been a good performer in the playoffs. So don't give me that.
DeMar DeRozan, I can't believe this. DeMar DeRozan he's a proven bucket. I mean, night in, night out.
In the regular season. And what's been the biggest knock on him his whole career? He's been inconsistent. That's his biggest knock the whole career.
When you're matching up against the greatest player of all time in the playoffs,
but why can't you
There's going to be
do
problems.
what you can do? LeBron wasn't guarding DeRozan the whole game.
They also had Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love.
Well, Kyrie Irving's not a defender. He's not a good defender. I'm not even talking about like that. I'm talking about his performance as a player, a single player performance. He has not been historically good.
Listen, Ron, I know this is a star-driven league. There's still other players on the team. I mean,
but I'm talking about his performance as a single player, player performance.
He'd have to go. He would
good.
have to go off for 50 points for the Raptors to win that series. I don't want to hear this.
I'm not even talking, but he has not.
All right, so who do you have in this one? I mean, I'm just guessing.
Kings. I'm taking the Kings because they have
all that talk on DeMar DeRozan. You're taking the Kings
because
you got to be kidding.
They have Zach LaVine. That's why they have Zach LaVine.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So, I think I'm going to take the Kings as well. Even though we had that whole debate there, I really like
Yeah,
the
I
Kings
think
roster. And
they have it
I
over
think-
Dallas just
Yeah.
because, I mean, AD only plays every other day when he feels like it. So, I mean, and you saw that with the Lakers as well, my Lakers, that, he's a every other game player. So, we'll see that.
Before we wrap up the play-in talk, the loser of it would have been the Warriors and Grizzlies. We both took the Warriors, so it would be the Grizzlies versus the Mavericks in this instance. Who do you like in that one?
I'm going to go with the Grizzlies because they don't have anybody that can really, I think, go with John Morant, even though they're in dumpster fire right now, too. So I think I'm going to take the Grizzlies, though, because they still had a better record and everything.
I'm going to take the Grizzlies here as well. I agree with you. I don't think anyone can really touch John Morant on that roster. Moving things over to the Eastern Conference, we both picked the Magic, so it would be the Hawks versus the Bulls in my instance, the Heat in your instance. I like the Hawks versus whoever's there.
I think, even though, like I said, the only reason I picked Orlando to beat them is because they're arguably one of the best defensive teams in the league. So we got to, I think they'll neutralize him, but I don't think, the Heat will be able to really do anything with Trae Young.
Before we move things on to the Western and Eastern Conference Finals, just one quick question. Do you see any more upsets in the first round?
I don't see any upsets, really. At most, maybe the only one that maybe is the Rockets and Warriors. That be the only one, maybe, but I think the Rockets.
I think it would just be kind of the seeding. I don't know if that's necessarily an upset just with experience, but one that's kind of catching my eye is Pacers Bucks, especially with Damian Lillard being out. And just in terms of star power and the Bucks, they made it to the finals. I know Giannis wants to get another one, but without Dame, team's not too good. They only got Kyle Kuzma to lean on.
I don't really
after
consider
that.
that one an upset just because it's 4 and 5, so they're only like one apart, so they're not really that.
What about Knicks Pistons though? That one kind of catches my attention. Just with the Knicks haven't been the team we kind of expected them to be. The
Knicks were pretenders
bought way too
all
much into the
season.
Nova Knicks.
The Knicks were pretenders all season,
Yeah.
and I think I could definitely see Detroit winning that.
Yeah, I agree with you. So Eastern Conference, Western Conference Finals. I know you're a Lakers guy. Do you got your Lakers in the Western Conference Finals?
It don't matter, whether it's Anthony Edwards, Herm Edwards, whoever Edwards, Lakers in 5.
And I should have known it was coming. Who do you have? You said who do you have them in the Western Conference Finals? So?
I'm gonna say Lakers, and maybe Lakers Nuggets. Maybe no, they can't.
I like Lakers Thunder.
Yeah, Lakers Thunder. That's what I'd say.
I would have told you Denver a couple months ago until they fired Mike Malone. So I'm going to stick to Thunder and Lakers. Eastern Conference Finals, I hate to be simple, but I'm going with the 1 and 2 seeds. I'm going with the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics.
I'm going to go, that's who I'll probably go with too. But don't sleep on Detroit, though.
Yeah.
Detroit is my sleeper pick.
They could go on a run. I mean, they put a lot into this season. They finally got in the playoffs. They're probably the hungriest team in the playoffs. But I think the Cavs are going to be too young, not experienced enough. I know Donovan Mitchell.
I think D. Mitch,
he's made the playoffs every year in his career. But I think the Boston lineup, they have the best lineup in the NBA. I think they're just simply too talented, and that's why I'm going to take the Celtics.
Offensively, I think Cleveland is the best offensive team in the league. They're number 1 in points. They're number 2 in field goal percentage, and they're number 2 in point differential. So I think arguably they're the best offensive team in the league, and I think Evan Mobley should be DPOY this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I agree with that.
So they got a mix of everything. So and they've been there before. They were in the playoffs the last 2 years. So you can't really say they're inexperienced because they've been in the playoffs the last 2 years.
Well, I'm saying in terms of they've made the playoffs, but what it takes is playoff runs. They haven't made the Eastern Conference Finals yet. This is the Boston Celtics we're talking about. They've made the finals twice in the past 3 seasons. Being a champion of one. That's what I mean.
Matter.
Playoff runs and experience in playoff games.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What have you done for me lately?
So you want storybook? I'm guessing you're going Cavs-Lakers finals.
I would
Is that what
love
I'm hearing?
Yes, I would love that.
Okay.
I would love that.
Oh, I'm
LeBron
gonna,
against going back to Cleveland for the finals. That would be crazy.
we got two good stories here because I'm going Celtics-Lakers.
Either way,
two-story
even though I hate
franchises.
the Celtics, I would love to see that happen. I absolutely despise
Two-story
the Celtics
franchise,
too.
and it would be in the hunt for the most titles altogether. We went through upsets, play-in, fired coaches, and champions. That's going to wrap up this segment of the NBA playoffs and play-in tournament. Thank you so much for watching, but don't go anywhere because when we come back, it's going to be Joe Chirillo's time to talk about all things PGA.
Unable to watch the live stream? Follow our account on X for live updates on the game. Check us out on Instagram as well for game day posts with all the information you need to know, as well as behind the scenes of each production. Our social media team works the hardest to give the best content to all of our audience. We're even on TikTok. You can stay up to date with WCTV on our Instagram account with clips from each of our shows. And last but not least, subscribe to our WCTV YouTube channel to watch those shows in full length. Check us out from Lewiston, WCTV, and the entire Department of Comm.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the recap of the 89th Masters Tournament. To start us off, Augusta saw one of the best Masters tournaments in a long time, seeing a playoff for the Green Jackets since 2015, where Justin Rose was a competitor for that, but ended up losing to Sergio Garcia back in that 2015 timeframe. This time, it ended the same for Rose, with Rory McIlroy completing the career Grand Slam with his win at the Masters. McIlroy has been a part of 17 different Masters tournaments, becoming the second longest time frame to win a green jacket. Sergio Garcia holds that #1 spot until he won in 2015. McIlroy joins the elite of elite to complete the career Grand Slam of Gene Sarzan, Ben Hogan, Gary Player, Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, and now Rory McIlroy. Rory started out the week even, not making any large jumps, but staying alive. Round 2 saw him jump to 6 under after going bogey-free on the day. Moving day consisted of 2 eagles from Rory, putting him at 12 under total, making him the leader entering into the final day by 2. Now, some people are hating on Rory's win, saying he needed to play better to win. He shot at +1, his worst over the entire weekend. And I think some people forget that golf consists of 4 total days. Sorry that you only watch the final round and only watch the top 2 guys and make fun of them for not making a putt or something. But an actual fan who watches all 4 days, watches all the guys play some golf, and then you can judge them. Rory has been chasing this career Grand Slam for 11 years. 11! And the constant questioning of will this be the year, will it not, and end up falling short can only take a huge mental toll on you. That is why we got that reaction from McIlroy being so emotional on the 18th green. I want more fans to join the sport of golf. However, I want them to understand it is nothing like anything we have watched before. The mental battle of golf is truly incredible, and Rory was giving the best performance under immense mental pressure. After this Masters week, congratulations to Rory for finally winning his green jacket. I was overjoyed to watch the Northern Islander, who I watched as a kid finally achieve his dream and cement himself in history. With his victory, he's taking the week off, so no appearance from him at the RBC Heritage this coming weekend. Scottie Scheffler looks to defend his title against them as well, and my personal pick for this week is going to be Colin Morikawa or Justin Thomas with a win. Both of them have been surging up in the leaderboards, and they are both experienced on the course, so I could see either of them winning this weekend. That is going to do it all for your Masters tournament and this episode of Plead Your Case. Thank you again for watching, and congrats to Rory McIlroy once again.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.